All right, so this is the day you guys all have been waiting for. The last 10 weeks I've been building up for this, how we connect our React front end to our Django backend. Right, so the last couple of days we've been spending time creating a wine API with our Django framework, where we create an API, we can serve up data via JSON format. Now we want to create a front end that can consume that data and provide like a good user interface for users interacting with the site, right? They don't want to be using Postman to read and write data. Users just want like a nice web page that has UI elements that they're familiar with. So let's get to creating a simple React front-end app that's going to tap into our backend API that we have deployed. All right, so let's just get a good refresher on creating a React app. So this is what I'm going to do. You guys can do things a little differently. This is not what I want. CD. Okay, so I've created a folder called wine project. So I'm going to cd into wine project, code that up. And that's going to be slightly different than what we've done before. So I just want to point that out. You don't have to do this. You could have two separate windows, but you also have just one window like I'm going to have, just to make it easier so I don't have to keep switching back and forth. It's brighter and bigger. All right, so what I'm doing here, I've created a folder in my wine project called backend. This backend project is what my Django, where my Django project is located. So it's kind of like nested folders, which I usually avoid, but in this case, I want to have two separate sections of my entire project. So my wine project is going to be my all-encompassing front end and back end, even though they're still separate applications, I guess. This entire project is going to be in one folder. So my backend again is our Django API. So it should look familiar, where we have our models, what our models look like. So our models, we had name, price, which varietal, and description. One thing I want to point out right now, because it might throw some people off, I've renamed my field here to be name. I believe our example used wine name. That just bothered me because we already have our wine model. Like we don't have wine price, wine description. So I changed this to name. That was my choice. So anything I'm coding up is going to be referencing name. You guys will probably be using wine_name if you are using your API from the past. Just want to point that out in case you run into trouble, but you guys should be able to adapt it for your code. All right, so yeah, so again, my backend is my API that should be fully coded up. I'm not going to make any changes unless I need to that. But now I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it front end. It's just be super generic. All right, so I create a new folder called front end. All right, so my front end here, that's what my React project is going to go under. So again, backend is Django projects. Front end is going to be my React project. So I'm going to open up a terminal. I'm going to deactivate. I'm going to cd into front end. And here I'm going to run my npx create React app. We're creating a React app from scratch. I'm going to call this, let's call it wine sites. I don't know about naming, but I'll go with wine sites. All right, so that's going to take a couple minutes here.
Quick question while this is loading. So whenever I took the old project and moved it into the new folder backend, we're getting all sorts of errors with the import stuff. Do we need to go through and install everything from Heroku to REST framework?
You should not have to change anything with imports. What I effectively did was I took my API and just dropped everything into a new folder. That should not impact imports because all the files within it are still relative. The same relative paths exist. So nothing's changed with my file structure internally. It's just I added another outer folder so that I could have two folders now, front end and back end. So the answer is no, you should not need to change any imports or make any modifications with anything for your backend. You just kind of relocated it and it's now in a new location.
Yep. Anchor, so yep. you put both of your one app and one project into the backend, right?
Sorry, what was the question? My backend? This is my Django project. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So it's Django only. My front end is going to be React. So these are still going to be right now going to be separate Git projects. I'm going to have one destination for my backend and one for my front end. Again, they could be combined. In this case, I'm not combining them right now. All right. So once that eventually finishes, it's still going, almost done, I believe. All right, we're gonna take another 10 seconds. All right, there we go. Happy hacking. Hopefully you guys have downloaded faster than I do. My internet's probably slower than yours. But all right, so again, our front end now has a wine site folder. That is our React project that we just created. In here, we should see our familiar friends where we have our public folder, our node modules, our source folder, also package.json. Again, this should have all of the items we're using. So in addition to the defaults, which are React, React DOM, React scripts, we want to install a couple more things. So for this project, we're going to use React Router. So that's React Router DOM. Let's install that. So install React Router DOM. We'll do this one by one. All right, so another thing we're going to use is npm install React Bootstrap. So we'll install that. So it can give us those components. I mistyped it. I want to do npm install React Boots with a T Bootstrap. There we go. There's a module called Bootstrap, apparently. All right, and the last thing I want to install is npm install Bootstrap. So this gives us some of the code that React Bootstrap is going to use. All right, so 3 things we installed additionally to after we create a React app was npm install React-router-DOM. Second thing was install React-Bootstrap for some UI elements, and then we're going to install Bootstrap because we need some data from there or some libraries from there. All right, so we'll do that. Again, all of this is on the curriculum page, so if you forget or just are kind of delayed, you should be able to follow along there. All right, cool. So we installed those. Again, our package.json should, that is not what I want. All right, I made this mistake. Maybe you made a mistake too. I need to actually go into my wine site. So notice I have 2 layers of package.json. One is my initial one, and the second one got created when I added the dependencies. That is not what you want. You're going to run into some issues. You have multiple package.jsons. So easy mistake to make. I make it all the time. Let's actually go into that folder. cd into wine sites, and then install all those items again. So refresher, we installed React Router DOM. It's going to be version 6. Also get rid of this node modules folder that I got created. So we only want the node modules within one site. So again, you probably got a secondary node modules if you were following along with my core npm installs. All right, so now we want to do React Bootstrap. I'm just going to do Bootstrap only with it. So again, you can install multiple items at once. See if that works. Okay, so this should take care of our setup. Definitely a couple minutes wasted there, but it happens when we're creating from scratch. All right, so we installed everything we need to install. Now let's get to developing. So first thing I want to do is run npm start, make sure my React server gets up and running. All right, let's see if that came up. Let's get rid of some of this stuff. All right, it's coming up, it's thinking, it's doing something. Should see that React logo in a couple seconds. Still starting. It's like my computer's having a slow day. There we go. Do we have it now? There we go. So if everything was set up correctly, you should have your spinning logo icon. Your React server should be running. Okay, let's get to editing your code. So we're going to be going, again, follow along with the curriculum page. I'm going to be coding along on the screen. First thing is always I dive into app.js, get rid of everything they provide. So I don't want to see that logo on my app here. So let's get rid of everything between the divs. And we don't need the logo anymore. That can go away. Logo can be deleted also. Bye-bye. All right, so app.js, again, this is our top most level component. App is the top root node for our React application. Here, we're going to add a few things. So one thing off the bat, this is something I usually forget. Since we're using Bootstrap, we need to have Bootstrap CSS. Usually, I usually just drop that into my app, so every component that uses Bootstrap can have access to it. So don't forget to add that. If you don't add it, things will work, but your UI will not look as Bootstrap intended it to. So that is why we need to install Bootstrap so we get access to their CSS. All right, next we're going to add a couple pages. So let's say pages. One thing will be import homepage. We're going to create this. So again, none of this has been created. from, we're gonna create a new place called pages. Let's actually do this the other way. So we'll go back to our app.js. Let's create our pages first. So in my source directory, I'm going to create a new folder called pages. Let's create a few components in here. So pages will have a homepage, homepage.js, page.js. This is going to be a functional component. So we'll do React functional components, call it homepage. All right, so again, bare minimum homepage where we have a functional component, return empty div and exports that component. In here, I'm going to add in h2 and call this homepage. All right, so with this homepage component kind of subbed out, I'm gonna copy all that code, create another page and call that wine page.js. And surprise, surprise, it's gonna be pretty much identical to what I have here, except I'm gonna do some renaming. So wine page will be the title, wine page will be the component name. And one more page when you're create. So this one's gonna be called add wine page.js. And it's gonna look identical right now with our other pages. So I'm just gonna copy and paste, add wine, and add wine. If we're going too quickly, let me know. I could pause for a couple of seconds. But again, we're just creating some simple components. We create a new folder called pages within our source directory. Those three components were homepage, wine page, and add wine page. All right, with those in place, let's go to back to our app.js so we can import them. So I'm going to do pages.
There, by the way.
Pardon?
Sorry, in add wine page on the export.
Thank you. All right, so pages, we're going to import those. So let's do import homepage from, all right, VS Code found it. Great. Let's try that again. Import wine page. Hey, VS Code found that. And then finally want to import add wine page, and we're 3 for 3. So VS Code usually should be able to find your imports for you. Makes it nice that we don't have to type it all out. All right, with those in place, next we want to do is implement our router. So we're going to be using our router for internal navigation. So we need to import some things from our React router DOM. So import, we're using browser router. We're going to be using something called routes, also something called route singular. And I think those are the 3 buddies we need here. So that's going to be imported from React router DOM. All right, so we're going to be using these components from the React router. All right, so let's set up our router here. So I'm going to do maybe, we want browser router. All right, inside of that, we're going to nest a routes element, plural. Within that, this is where we create our individual routes. So one route will be exact path, let's call that /wines. And that's going to render the elements of our homepage. So here are homepage components that we created. That's what this route's going to use. Anytime we go to /wines, we should get our homepage. All right, let's close that route. We're going to add another route for our wine detail page. So this path is going to be, this is where we use a variable in our URL. So it's going to be wines, our same base path, but now we're going to have a wine ID appended to that URL. So again, it's going to be wines, because that's our base path we chose, and then wine ID. I believe with router 6, might have been available in version 5, you can create nested routes. So notice I'm creating this wines prefix repeatedly. Similar to Django, there's a way to kind of structure your routes so that you can have a similar base path and kind of append onto it from there. So instead of having wines every time, I could do a slash and then just, like we did before. But I'm not going to change up syntax right now. So I'm just going to recreate that each time. So wines is our base element. In this case will be wine page and show our wine detail. So that's going to be, again, the rendered component. So we need to actually put the angle brackets there. And close that out. All right, one more route that we're going to have. And that route is going to be for adding a new wine. So path will be, let's call that /wine/add. Elements is going to be the add wine page. Right? Hopefully all this seems familiar. Again, I know we don't use the router too extensively, but hopefully you kind of understand what's going on here. We're just creating different destinations within our React app that a user can navigate to. So if they navigate to one location, we'll render one component, then navigate to another, we render accordingly with our router here.
Could we take like just a 2-minute breather and just have you on this page? Well, I don't know. I'm trying to catch up with a little bit of the typing here.
Sure. Again, you can copy this from the curriculum page. So I'm not going to have the ability to pause, repeatedly. But again, this is essentially what we should have here. It looks like I'm missing a class name here, so that is something I should add in here. You don't need a class name here, but this gives us some CSS functionality. So let's add that. Class name equals. Okay, so we created our router on our app, inside of our app component. Again, this is just going to give us some routing. That's going to take us to various pages here. So let's actually test this out. Let's see if we forgot a step. Looks like our server is happy, compiled successfully. That's always good to see. If I go to localhost 3000, there's nothing here because we not specified a route for it. If we go to /wines, that should be our homepage. And notice it does say homepage, so that leads me to believe I'm actually navigating to my homepage. Let's say I go to /wines77. Now this wine ID doesn't exist, but right now we're not using that wine ID in any respect in terms of getting data. We're just matching a URL. So in this case, I go to wine/77. I'm taken to my wine page. That is what I expect to see. And finally, my last route, or our last route that we added was /add. So I go there. I should be taken to the add wine page. All right, so that leads me to believe that my routing is all set up. So, check that box off. Let's actually go into adding some functionality now. So where should we start? I think we should start with our API. So I'm going to go to my source folder, add a new folder called API. And in here, I'm going to add wines API as a file, .js. All right, so this is going to contain my API calls to whatever API endpoint I'm trying to hit. So I usually like creating a base URL here. So I'm going to create base URL. And now the question is, where is this going to point to? We have an endpoint set up. You are welcome to use it. So I put up an endpoint on Heroku, or you can use your endpoint that you put up on Heroku from the past couple of days. So it is your choice. Just make sure you know what data you're working with if you're using your own. But if you want to use the endpoint that should be up right now, should be somewhere here. Scroll down. This is the endpoint we're going to be using. Looks a little funny. We'll talk about why it looks a little funny in a moment. But I'm just going to copy and paste on the curriculum page. So the application I have running is called Pop-up Platoon -wine-API on Heroku. And the base for that is going to be /API/wines. Again, that's coming from my backend. So if I look at my URLs here in my backend projects, URLs, my base I chose was API/wines. I don't know why I have multiple nested paths there, but that made sense to me. So that's what I'm using in my backend.
So Ankur, in development, when we're doing this on our own machine, would you say build the backend first, deploy it to Heroku, and then start building your front end, or keep it all local to your machine and access your API locally?
The way I normally do it is I develop my backend, I test it locally on my machine with Postman and whatever the Django REST Framework API. Once I validate I'm getting the data I want, then I'll throw that up onto Heroku and test it again with Postman, make sure that I can hit my endpoints from my local machine to Heroku. And then I'll develop my front end locally and then test it locally, test my local React project against the Heroku endpoint. And then finally, you can push your front end to Heroku also, so that you have everything on the web where you can have one of your friends or family members go to Heroku, have a React front end that's going to be making calls to your React backend on Heroku. So usually always start with local, make sure everything works, and then migrate to Heroku once you are confident it's working as you wish. That's the way I go with. Again, you could have a different workflow if you wish. That's usually what I go for. All right. So yeah, in this case, I have thrown it up on Heroku because I've tested my backend. It was working. Hopefully I didn't break anything along the way. But now let's actually make our API calls in our API file. So again, our base URL has this cores anywhere in it. again, that is something we'll discuss, but for now, kind of just accept we're going to need to make calls via cores anywhere. So whatever your project is should have this prepended to it. So everything I've highlighted right now, https://cores-anywhere.herokuapp.com. That is what you should prepend to your own project if you have your own Heroku URL that you're using. Yeah, we'll talk about this towards the end of the lecture today. But we wanted to get this working, so Cores Anywhere is going to allow us to make requests without some additional caveats. All right, let's add some API calls here. So I like creating something that I call try, catch, fetch. You don't have to create it, but makes some reusable code. So try, catch, fetch. That's going to do some stuff for us. I'm going to take an URL init equals false. Let's make this an anonymous function just for fun. So this is going to be async. That is a keyword I want. Async, if I spell that correctly. So I need some spelling troubles. All right, async, ASYNC. It's going to be a fat arrow function. All right, so this is going to take in a URL. As you might guess, this function is going to be doing a try catch. I'm going to do const response equals await. So we want to actually wait for that fetch to resolve, right? That's the whole point of using async here. So we can use await to wait for this promise to resolve. Again, going back to the discussion of promises, make sure you understand what fetch is actually returning to you. It's a promise, it's not an actual value. So when we await on it, they'll wait for the promise to resolve and give us back a value. The fetch is going to take in URL and inits as parameters. Once we get a response.
I'm so sorry, Ankur. Before you move on, init, what is that doing?
Good question. So init is something I've named as a variable, but that is a parameter that goes into fetch. If we go back to documentation, we search for fetch API. First response should be what I want. Yep. So again, usually when you're doing a GET request, you just want the URL. Let's go to fetch. So fetch takes in the resource. That's the first parameter. That's the URL you want to go to. Init is the second optional parameter that we specify when we want to send a post. So without init there, it's always going to be a GET request by default. Init lets us specify the method, the headers, the body. So that's what init's going to contain.
Got it. Thank you.
The reason I name it init is just because the documentation names it init. We could probably name it, something more descriptive, but I usually just default to init because the documentation only, that's what they call it. Again, it does not have to be named init. Again, this is just a variable. Just want to make that clear. But yeah, so we'll see how we use that in a second. All right, so the response, again, we always want to inspect the response. The response is going to have a field called OK on it. Again, if you're wondering like, well, how do you know it's going to have an OK on it? Well, documentation. So we go to fetch response at OK. So that's a value. Let's actually go to the response objects, response. So again, we're just bouncing around documentation. This is everything your response is going to have on it. So there's a lot of information on it. There's OK, which is basically signifying if you got a valid response back. You also have access to the status code. So if you want to actually care about the status code or the status text, you have availability of that. Then there's other information. You might have some headers sent back to you. You guys can kind of go through your documentation page. But in this case, OK is just signifying that I actually got what I expected back. So if that's true, we could return await response.json. I'm going to convert it to JSON, wait on that, and then return the results, the JSON that's returned to us. Again, .json is an asynchronous method. That's why we're going to await on it. If we did not get an OK response, let's actually do a little bit of error handling here. So else, what are we going to do here? I think we could throw error. Want to throw a new error. So we're creating an error object here. Throwing, I'm not sure we covered this. Anytime you throw within a try statement, that's going to be caught by the catch handler. Or it will be attempted to be caught. If it's not caught, anyone else has an option to catch it. So we throw a new error. This will say, let's say bad request or bad response. Let's show the status code. So $response.status. Again, that's the code. And I want to see the status text, so I'll do $response dot status. Again, all of these fields are from the response object. If you're not clear on what fields exist, read documentation to figure out what fields you have access to. In this case, I wanted to show the error code or the response code and the text that got sent back. That could be useful to me. All right, we're going to catch the error, and then we're just going to, let's say, console.error, the error, so we can see it in our console if we do get an error. In this case, I'm going to choose return null. So keep in mind, try catch fetch might return null. So that's something you're going to want to check from the return value here. So with that in place, I can write my API methods here. So I'm going to call it fetch to const fetch articles. It's going to be an anonymous function. This is going to be async again. Async, fat arrow. All right, so we're just going to use our try catch fetch. So URL in this case is going to be our base URL. Const URL equals base URL. And then we're going to return await try catch fetch URL. All right, I'm going to take a pause here because I might be going a little quickly. I want to make sure we fully understand how async await is working, because that is an important concept. Understand what our try catch fetch is doing. Again, we're just making a fetch request. If we get an OK response, cool, we just return the data. If we don't get an OK, we throw here. So this throw is going to be caught right here. So whatever I'm sending right here, this error, is going to be caught with this parameter called E. And then we're just going to print that out and return null instead. So we actually return something in either case. One case, return actual data. Other case, return null.
And Ankur, I do have a question for you. Well, two things. One's an observation. On line 20, fetch articles, you do mean fetch wines, correct?
Yes, I do. Thank you. I have
So now the actual question I have for you. So for the else statement, I get what you're saying. The throw is essentially passing it to the catch. Is there a reason why the else just can't be the catch?
Yes, in this case. So one thing I know is that fetch is almost never going to fail. So this is kind of like, getting the details here, but this is never going to throw an exception for the most part. There are rare cases where fetch might, fail. It might be like a network outage or something. But this is always going to give you back a valid response. Now, the distinction here is that that response might not be what you were looking for, but the server's always going to give you a response, right? So I requested something, server's going to respond with something. If I don't get back an OK, that means I didn't get back specifically what I was looking for, but I still got a response. So again, no errors have occurred right now. So the reason we get into this else case and throw an error is so that we can catch it and do what we want to. So in this case, if fetch for whatever reason failed, if response.json, that typically can fail. Sorry, that is more likely to fail if for example, if your data is not JSON format, this will likely fail. So that will be another error that will be caught here. So we're kind of just centralizing our error handling in case if this fails, or if this fails, or if we create our own error, it's going to be all handled by this one catch. So we can't do a catch here because these might not necessarily throw an error. Like we might get a response that doesn't have an OK. In that case, we want to create our own custom error. So that's why we structure it this way. Cool. All right. So again, async await, make sure you're familiar with that. If you're not, please ask questions. But here, fetch wines is really simple because we have try catch fetch doing all the work for us. We just pass it the URL we want, in this case, base URL, and then we wait on the results and then return whatever try catch fetch returns. So I'm going to copy and paste this because we're going to create another API call that looks very similar. Fetch wine by ID. This will take in a wine ID. And then our URL is going to change a little bit. It's going to be plus wine ID. This should concatenate to a string. So this might be a numeric value, but you're doing a string plus a numeric value that will convert it back to a string. So that should be fine. I don't think I need to change anything there. Maybe I need an ending slash, do I? We'll find out. If I have some trouble there, I need an ending slash. Last one I'm going to add is add wine. This is going to take in a wine object. I'm going to call it obj. URL, in this case, is going to be our base URL. So again, if we were using Django Rust framework, or if we're using the framework or the API I've set up, we're going to be posting to the base URL. Because again, DRF, if you remember, get request gives you a list of wines. Posting to that same URL will create a new wine for you. So base URL is going to be my path. Here, I'm going to actually use that init parameter. So we're going to create a new object or dictionary that's going to have our method. So when we're creating a new wine, we use post. We're not going to use a get, we use post for this. Our headers is going to be another dictionary that's going to have content type. So let's do content type. I'm just going to copy it from the curriculum page because I always forget. So where we go? How many pages up in? All right. So we are doing. Oh, it looks like I didn't add one here. That is my bad. Let's figure that out then. Content type should be application/JSON. And then finally, we want a body. So sorry for omitting that on the curriculum page. But the body will simply take in our wine object. We need to convert it to JSON format. So here, let's do, sorry, we don't need a dictionary. We just want to do JSON.stringify wine objects. I'm going to add that to the curriculum page because it looks like I made this. So copy this, go to the curriculum page. Add wine was left blank. That was unintentional. So we're add wine. Hopefully that looks correct. Check that out.
Ankur, while you're there, I don't know if you did it intentionally, but when you get back the data from this, we get an object called data, and you got to go data.wines. But in the different sections, you just call it data, and then it ends up not giving. You got to go a level deeper.
Yes. So yeah, I was coding this along and I was trying to update the curriculum page at the same time. So yes, thank you for catching that.
What you just pasted in, what you passed that function, you called it wine data, and then I think you referred to it as wine object.
Yep. Okay, catches. Let's clean this up so that you guys have the right code. So we're using init, and then we need to pass back return await. Let me code it here. So all right, so we have our init objects. We want to return URL with init passed into it. So try catch fetch. Let's copy all of this. Right, so that there. Fix this here. And we need our ending.
Should that be on the add wine function? Should that still return await try catch fetch?
Yep. So try catch fetch is the one making the fetch request. Since we are waiting the result there, we want to await the result here too. So it's a bunch of like waiting on the other function complete. If we don't have that, this will return a promise. So whatever calls add wine is going to get a promise back. It's not going to get the actual result back.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, hopefully this is all typed up correctly. Let's continue on. So again, three API calls here. One for getting wines, one for getting wine by ID, one for adding new wine. So let's create, let's see, const export items. Make this a dictionary. So we have fetch wines. Also had fetch wine by ID. Then we had add wine. All right, we're going to export default export items. I do this because sometimes I get a warning if I just try to export a dictionary. I'm not sure why that happens. But all right, so these are the three items we're exporting, the three API calls, and then we're exporting that dictionary or that object. All right, you guys with me? All right, so that takes care of our API. We should test this out. So we're gonna wire this up shortly. I guess if we want, again, this is something that I did before, but if you wanted to test this, we should have the ability to use Postman. So let's actually quickly do a quick GET request to this URL. I'm gonna kind of point out something that you guys might deal with. So let's create a new request here. Let's get all this stuff out. Cool.
And Ankur, did you actually like save or push those changes you just did?
Nope, this is on my local machine, so I don't need to push it anywhere.
Oh, just to clarify, I mean within the GitHub, what you just edited for the wine API.js.
No, sorry. If you're using the back end, the front end on the web page that's not updated right now. Sorry, here. Let me commit these changes. Yeah, so the curriculum page will have the changes that I submitted. The React front end pre-built application does not have the changes right now. But yeah, I just saved that. So that should have the add wine all here. Hopefully I didn't miss anything here.
It does. Thank you.
Sorry. Okay, yeah, I forgot to commit that. All right, let's test our endpoint. And I want to highlight something that you might run into. So I'm going to do a GET request again to that Cores Anywhere Heroku app, and then my app, which is Platoon wine API herokuapp.com API/wines. That's a mouthful to say. Let's do a GET request. Let's see what happens. Missing request header. What? That's all I expect. What if we go in our browser? So this is something
I got mine worked with the GET request.
okay. Not sure what's going on here. Okay, one thing I want to point out. So the whole point of doing this was if you actually manually goes to that URL. So this is my URL. If you have your own project, you might need to do this. Let's see if this actually works. No, that's not good. What the hell?
Hey, and Ankur, I don't know if this is what we're supposed to get, but I have stuff in like HTML, and it's like to temporarily unlock access to the demo, click on the following button. Is that what you're supposed to get?
Yeah. So yeah, no one click on that button yet. I want to try to get to that page. So you guys beat me to it. I'm not sure what I screwed up here. Let's is my request screwed up somehow? So headers. Sorry, I did not run into this before. Anyone know what I'm missing in my Postman here?
Ankur, I can access your information just by putting the just the HTTP, the Platoon-wine API, not doing the cores anywhere.
Gotcha. Yeah, let's see. Give me a moment to troubleshoot this. So missing. So yeah, I'm not sure why you guys are able to do this when I'm getting. Let's see, Stack Overflow, good friend of ours. Blah, 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 trying to do this. Okay, this might be a problem with my browser. I think that's not it. All right, I have some browser issue apparently. Okay, so apologies. I'm going to need to, that's not an issue. Let's try my other browser. I've usually used Firefox. Let's see if that works. Nope. What the is going on? All right, I think we should take a break. I'm gonna try to figure this out. I've never seen this error before, but let's take a 10-minute break. Be back at 11:05, and hopefully I have this figured out somehow. All right, so we're in some technical difficulties.
Did we miss anything, or are we still at the same issue? Okay.
Yep, same issue. So we're going to switch gears. I'm going to run this off my local machine instead of Heroku. I'm not sure what's going on right now, so we might need to table the Cores Anywhere discussion. But let me bring up a new terminal. Going to cd into the back end.
You're not sharing.
Sorry. There we go. All right, so I'm going to my backend project and run this off my local machine just to get this working. So backend, what do I want here? Python manage.py run server. That I want. Okay, so I have both my backend and front end running off my local host. So if I go to localhost 8000, all right, that looks familiar. I'm gonna go to /API/wines. All right, there we go. So this is the data I've already added to my local host, local database. So it looks a little different than what I have on the web. but I think we added this together from Monday's lecture. Looks like I mistyped Michael Roberts' name, so maybe we do an update for that through our Postman. So let's try hitting up my localhost. So if I go to, just copy this and I'm gonna mistype it. Let's make a GET request through Postman, send.
Hey, and I'm sorry, Ankur, this is probably a silly question, but a post request through Postman will actually update the page, correct? Or no,
What do you
it's just to see,
What do you mean by update the page?
like if you submit a post request on Postman, is that just to see how it would like look on your back end, let's say, like if we're using if you wanted to add a new wine to this and you did a post request on Postman, that's just like showing you what it would look like, right? It's not actually going to update the database.
No, it's going to actually update a database. So Postman.
Okay, that's what I thought. My mentor was wrong then. So yes,
Gotcha.
all right.
Yeah,
Cool.
so Postman lets you submit API requests without having a front end. So you're sending the data still. You just don't have like a React front end or any web page to interact with. You're just specifically sending data to an endpoint. So in this case, we're sending a post request to API wines if we wanted to create a new wine. In this case, I want to do an update. So let's test out updating. Go to wine 1. I want to go to a GET request. All right, so this is our Pinot Noir that we created on Monday. I mistyped Michael Robertson's name. So let's do a patch. So I'm going to patch this. Our body will be here, raw JSON. I need to just send the description. All right, this is, again, stuff we did on Monday and Tuesday, but all right, so description should be Robert's son, not Sion. All right, so send this. So again, we're doing a patch to this location with this data. Let's see if this works. Nope. Append slash always gets me. And that slash, bad request. Oof.
Do you need the S on HTTP?
I do not, but good thoughts. Let's take a look at my backend. Maybe I have some errors here. So app URLs. So we have ID, views. I don't have patch implemented, that's why. Okay, we'll do put. Simple enough. All right, we're gonna do a put request because I don't have patch implemented, so I'm not using DRF. That's fine. Corrects the last name, do a send. Bound error. And now the errors are just passed. That's good. All right, what's going on here? Wine. Here. All right, let's see if that works. There we go. We finally updated that wine. Looks like my code needs some work here, but all right. So I'm running off this localhost. Let's actually update our front end. So I'm going to go back to my front end API. So let's get rid of Django stuff. We're not messing with Django. Wine API. My base URL is going to be changed for now. So we'll change this to, instead of being this mess, it's going to be S, or without the S, HTTP// localhost. Mine's running off 8,000. That's where my backend is, and API 1. So let's see if this works. All right, so we tested out with Postman. Postman is able to hit my localhost endpoints. So again, do a GET request. We get our data back. That's what we want. Now we want to test it out with React. So we need to code this up. So our API has coded up. I tested with Postman. Our endpoint works for localhost. Let's actually go to our pages. So first one is homepage. Homepage should list out all the wines that we have. So I'm going to use one of our API calls here. So I'm going to import a couple items. First thing I'm going to import is use state from React. Also probably want use effects. Hopefully these hooks sound and are familiar to you. Use effects from React, and then we want to import that wine API that we just created. So wine API is what I'm going to call it from. Let's go find it. API/1. All right, so again, we're gonna be using a state value. So let's enter that in here. So states, we're gonna create a const wines. So it's gonna be a list of wines. And then we need our setter function. So set wines is going to equal use state. Initial value will be empty array. Again, if I'm going too fast, let me know. I can definitely slow down here. But
hey, I got a quick goofy question. For the use state and use effect, why are they wrapped in curly brackets at the top?
Yes, so we are kind of cherry picking what we're creating from React. So in this case, it's kind of like destructuring where we're only importing these two items. We're not importing everything. So instead, we could do something like import React from React, and then we would have to do React.useState. But in this case, again, this gives us access to everything from React. The curly braces allow us to pick exactly what we want to import.
Gotcha. So that's kind of like a okay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a little more specific. It kind of avoids importing unnecessary stuff. So in this case, use state is what we are using for state values. We also want to have an effects. So effects, again, this is normally where we want to make our API calls. So here we're going to do a use effect. Use effects. Remember, this takes in two parameters. The first parameter is going to be a function. Normally, we just create an anonymous function here. And the second parameter is a dependency array. Make sure you don't forget about this, because if you do not have this, it's going to run every update on every update instead of just once. So empty array, as a reminder, empty array here. That means arrow. That means only run on initial render, right? So hopefully you guys remember this from our lifecycle method. So empty array here means do this only one time. When I'm putting in my use effect, it's going to run it only one time. And that's when this component initially renders. So in here, I'm going to create a nested function, const get wines. This is going to be my async function. Anonymous function. And let's make sure we're clear on this. So why do we need to create a nested anonymous function? This is from reading your documentation. The function we pass in the use effect should not be anonymous. Sorry, should not be asynchronous. A lot of words here. So we can't simply put an async here because that is not proper practice. It might work, but again, this function is not expected to be async. That's why we are creating a nested asynchronous function that we're going to call from our synchronous function to kind of fire that off. All right, so we create an anonymous or asynchronous function that is also an anonymous function. This is going to be called from our use effect so that we could do this synchronously, but get wines will be asynchronous. All right, so get wines is going to get some data. So let's do const data is going to equal wine API, fetch, what do I call it? Fetch wines. And then that's going to take in no parameters, right? So fetch wines doesn't take anything in, should get us a data back. And then let's just console log that data. Make sure we know what we're working with. And that's all we're going to do here. We're not going to show anything on our homepage yet. So
I'm missing an await on line 11.
yes, I am. Good catch. So again, if I did not have that wait there, I'll get a promise back. So I'd be printing out a promise right here. Instead, I want to actually wait for this promise to resolve so I actually get the data back, and I can print out the data. Thank you. All right, so let's test this out. So wines, I guess I'm not setting a state value, but if data, we'll do something. All right. All right, so let's actually see if this works. I'm going to go to my React front end. So this is my React front end. Let's go back to /wines. All right, that's my homepage. Nothing on it, but my console hopefully should have something in it. All right, looks like I got an error. That's fine. Failed to execute fetch on window. Provide a value of type request init. All right, that's new to me. Let's check out our wine API. So URL. All right, so fetch wines that uses base URL, which is now this. So let's try to manually go to that, see if we actually get there. Manually, yep, we can get there because I had it here. All right, so what's going on here? Failed to execute fetch on window. am I missing something here? Awaits, that's good. I have my awaits here. These are async, that looks fine.
Should
Okay.
init be null and not false?
Pardon?
In the fetch catch, whatever it's called, fetch catch thing. Should this init be null instead of false as a default
Yes.
value?
You are right. Thank you. That is definitely what there was. So refresh. All right. Cores. All right, so we get back to cores. Let's deal with cores right now then. Sorry for all this trouble. All right, so we're gonna scroll down on our curriculum page. Where is that? All right, so going down to allow Django to receive cores requests. This is at the bottom of the page. We're gonna cover this later, but it looks like we gotta do this now. So
Actually, I got it working. The cores anywhere in Postman.
what about it?
Yeah, finally, I just got it working.
What did you have to do for it?
So all you have to do is have the X request with header and the origin header with no value, and it works.
Okay, not sure why that changed on me, but let's go with that because that's what I want to do. We'll try it. If it doesn't work, we'll stick with locals. Thank you. Kevin, you kind of guide me here. So Postman, go to
the headers. So the request headers that you got back on Postman.
Yep. So we're going back to here, headers.
So all you need to add is because they're required headers is the X requested with. So if you start typing X, X requested with, and then origin as the next key. No, sorry, not a value. You can leave that blank, and then just put an origin as the key, and then that one, and then it should work.
Awesome. Okay, thanks for testing that out. Yeah, again, I've not had to do this before. I literally did this last night and it worked. So I don't know if they changed something like overnight with this, which is quite possible. Let's give this a try. So get requests here. Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. That makes my life much easier. Not sure why this is required. Again, they might have changed something on the cores anywhere side, like overnight. But all right, so the answer to our issue was we got to add some empty headers here. So X requested with and origin. As the error might have signified, like this was telling us we need an origin X request with. So that probably should have pointed us to where we wanted to go. But now if we actually go here, I guess my header here does not have it. Do you guys still get the error in your browser?
Yeah, I'm not sure how to add the headers to the browser.
Yeah, so I have a plugin for that, but I'm not going to bother with that. But for our request, we should probably have those since it's what's going to fail. So let's go back to our init. Init here. So we're going to need a default init object. So let's do const init. So let's try it without it. If it doesn't work, we'll add the init. So back to using cores anywhere. So let's switch that up here. Let's try, see if this works. Refresh, probably get an error. Oh, we got a wines array. Why do I have 103 entries here?
Probably everyone trying it, no?
Okay.
Someone on the back
I
end.
added a few wines.
A few, yeah, okay. That's fine. I was not expecting 103. Let's actually take a look at our data. So again, we're back to my endpoint here. So let's go check out the data here. All right, so it looks like you guys were pretty busy. Not sure who added all these, but thank you for seeding my database with some data. All right, so we have 103 items. That's cool. So it looks like it's working in Postman. It looks like it's working from React. We are getting the response. So it looks like we don't need to specify those additional headers from React side. So that's good to see. All right, so we're getting our data back. Thumbs up. Keep in mind that we are getting a dictionary back with a wines entry. So that's something that James Kelsey mentioned was wrong with my initial code on the curriculum page. But here, data has an entry called wines. That is what we want to set to our wines value. So let's make sure we know about that. So let's do if data. Again, the reason I need to check data.
Ankur,
yes.
Before we get too far ahead, what did you change in Wine API that actually allowed this all to work? Because I kind of missed that.
Oh, we changed it in our Postman. So Postman, we need to add X requested with an origin with no values in our headers. And that allows us to make this request. In my React code, I didn't know how to change anything.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you changed something in Wine API.
No, I was going to add these headers also for the React side, but it looks like it works without it. So if it works,
Thank you.
I'm not gonna mess with it. Yep.
Wait, and then I'm sorry for this, but so it seems to be working on mine. I didn't have to do any of that. Do I just request the temporary access, or
Yes.
what do I do again?
Yeah. So if you guys get to that page, request temporary access. Again, if you're using your own project, you're going to need to do that one time. Okay. Let's continue on. So if data, the reason I need to check data here, just a reminder, is because the way I've coded my API here, if we get an error, we're going to return null. Normally, you don't want to just call things off null because that's going to crash your application. So always double check, make sure you have valid data. So here in my homepage, I want to make sure I have something that's not null. In that case, I'm going to set wines to be data.wines. Otherwise, we'll just kind of not show anything right now. Set wines. All right, so that's going to set our state value. We're not using our state value right now. So let's actually create something called wine list and pass it our wines. Now, what is wine list? Well, that is a component we've yet to create. So I'm going to go to my source directory, create a new folder called components, just as a naming convention. Add a new item called wine list.js. That's going to be a brand new shiny component, React functional components to be specific, called wine list. All right, so wine list here. What is this going to do? Where we're going to show a table. So for this part, I'm going to copy and paste on the curriculum page because I don't want to deal with all the Bootstrap details and I probably almost type something. So let's go back up. Wine list page, where are you? Wine list. All right, so this is going to have a table in it. And then I'm going to copy all this code and then we'll talk about it. Let's copy the whole thing. All right, so let's make sure we understand what we copied. So we're using a table component from React Bootstrap. So this is something that's going to format our data, and we don't need this, but it's something we're including. Link, that's our React router DOM item that lets us link to a page within our router. All right, so in our render, we are specifying a table component that's going to have some nested properties. Again, this is our table header. So we have the ID, the wine, the price, the varietile that we're going to show. And then in our table body, that's what T body stands for. Table body, we're actually going to show our data. So our data is composed of table rows. Again, this is just basic HTML that we didn't go over. But tables aren't used too often, but in this case, we need table rows and then table data. Looks like I'm missing an ID field. Is that correct? Add in a TD/TD. I think I need wine.id here. All right, so again, we have 4 columns, one for the ID, one for the wine name, price, and varietile. We're not showing description here. That's a choice we made, but we did not enter a table data for each of those columns. All right, so again, we're passing down wines as a props. So if you remember from homepage, we create a wine list component. We're passing down wines as a prop. So in our wine list, we should be able to accept props and expect that we have wine set on it. But if it's null, we should definitely check for it. If we had an error from the homepage, we'll have a null value here. So in this case, I guess it'd be an empty list, but in this case, always good to check. Otherwise, we're going to use our handy dandy map function. Again, this is an array method. Hopefully you guys are familiar with that. That's going to iterate over our wines, create a new array with each element being what I've highlighted here. And that's what's going to be entered into our table. So let's see if this actually works. I'm going to refresh my, need to import wine list into my homepage. So here, need to import wine list. All right, so that's a new component I added. I need to import it as always. Let's see if this works. React's thinking about it. All right, there we go. There we go. Looks like it worked on the first try, which is surprising. But homepage, that's what we had before. I think I wanted the horizontal line. I'm gonna add that. That's there. Okay, so this is what our table looks like, and this is what React Bootstrap's doing for us, where we have a table here. And then we are showing different values. So we're showing the price, the varietile. We added a link. So this was the link tag that we added from our page. So this was just to highlight it. This link tag right here. This is from our React router where we specify where we actually want to go to. So in this case, we want to route just to the wine ID because that's what our routing is, right? It's wine/ID to get to the wine detail page. So here we surround our wine name with a link so that we can actually click on it. So if I click on it, what happens? That should take us to the wine page. That wine page is not coded up, but we do have a stubbed out page for it. So if I click on any one of these, let's click on Luca, number 27. Notice I'm taken to wines/27. This is the wine page. Again, nothing going on here right now. Let me pause here because I want to make sure everyone is following along. What questions do you guys have about getting the wine list on our homepage? Do you guys understand what all the pieces are doing? Do you guys understand use effects? That is something from our lifecycle methods. Again, this combined with an empty array, this means this is going to run one and only one time. And that's when our component initially renders.
Ankur, I'm getting an error. It's a syntax error, json.parse, and it is unexpected character at line 1, column 1 of the JSON data. So, like I was looking up solutions, and it seems like maybe it doesn't like that there's nothing in the, like there's no information there, but.
It's likely that what you're getting back is not JSON format. Are you using my endpoint or using your own endpoint?
Localhost, my own.
Okay, so if you're using your own, I would double check to make sure that your backend is sending your appropriate data. So test with Postman first. Make sure that when you make a GET request to the wine list page or the wine list endpoint, that you get JSON formatted data back. If you do not, that will be your first point of reference would be your backend's probably screwing up. If not, then we might need to look into the front end. But that's something, yeah, you might need to troubleshoot, or we can help you troubleshoot probably offline.
Right. Ankur, I don't want to go like this is a horrible question, and I know it's probably too big of a
there
question.
There are no horrible questions.
Use state, I'm kind of like, I kind of remember what use state was. I'm just trying to get a refresh of use effect. Use effect is when we're talking about like all the life cycle of the component, and use effect is just re-rendering something if something changes with one of the props or states of that component. Is that what use effect's doing for us?
It can do that for us. So currently this dependency array is telling us we only want to run this use effect when this component re-renders. We have no other use case for when we fetch the wine. So basically what happens is we go to the home page. So we go to localhost 3000/wines. That's going to render my homepage component because if you remember from our router tells us when we go to /wines, create a homepage component. So the first time that's created, it's going to render this component. After that happens, we're going to run this piece of code just one time. It's like an initialization method, sort of, because of this dependency array. We could add in some dependency here, like if our props that something changed. This means anytime this value changed from our props, do this again. So we might have a use case there, like if we have a filter, that's a good example. Like if we want to filter on wines and that filter constantly changes, we might need to constantly, fetch wines and apply that filter through the API if that is something we're doing. But yeah,
that helps a lot. Thanks, Ankur.
Yeah, use effect usually responds to a prop value changing or a state value changing or one of those two, or neither. So in this case, we're doing neither. We'll see an example of where the props changing actually is used with use effect. So that is to be coming, I guess.
Ankur, I have a quick style question.
Sure.
For lines 11 to 17, is it better to put them inside the use effect or outside of the use effect and then just call the function within the use effect?
That is developer option. The reason I prefer this way is because get wines is never going to be used outside of this use effect. So I'm kind of just like nesting it because this is the same idea of creating a variable, right? If I do let x equals 8, or I don't know what's that. If I create a local variable, it's only going to be accessible within this use effect. This is kind of like a local function I'm creating only for use effects purposes. No one else, like my render method, will not have access to it. So it's kind of like scoping it to exactly where it's needed. So that's why I put it here, but it kind of makes it harder to read. I'd agree with that too. So there's nothing wrong with pulling this out and putting this here and then calling get wines like we did before. So either way, I would argue this is cleaner, maybe easier to read slightly, like get wines. Okay, cool, we go here. So yeah, either way works. I'll leave it like this.
Okay, thank you. That was a really good explanation.
Yeah, but again, I don't think either way is wrong. It's whatever you think is best for your code. Cool. All right. So looks like our wine list is working. Let's get our wine detail page going. So wine detail page going here. So this is where we're going to use that use effect with a condition on it. So here, I'm going to import a few things. Import what I want. Use effects from React. So our wine detail page is going to use our get or fetch wine by ID. It's going to have a singular ID that we won't need to get. So here we need to use effects. Let's add that in here. So effects, use effects, takes in a function similar to what we did before. So we're going to create a new function const get wine by ID. Let's call it get wine. That's going to be an async function. That's going to take in a, that doesn't need to take in anything actually. That's it. No could capture from that side. So get wine. Let's actually just pass an ID. I don't think I need to, but I'm going to do it anyway. So ID, and then we're going to do the same thing we did before. So we're going to do const data equals awaits. We need our wine API, so let's get that in here. Import wine API from .API. Okey-doke, so we have our wine API. We have a method called fetch wine, singular, by ID. Pass it an ID. All right, we want to do the same thing we did on our homepage. I'm just going to expedite this. I'm going to we don't need to expedite that. So, all right. So here I'm going to check if data is something that's not null. What do we want to do here? We want to set some state value. So use states. Let's create a state value for this wine object that we just got. So states const wine set wine equals use states. This will be null initially. So again, we need to pay attention. Like initially, there's going to be a null value, so we can't just use it, outright. Otherwise, once we get our data back, we could use set wine data. All right, our wine page is going to look pretty boring. We'll deal with it. Let's have an H3 for our wine. It's going to be wine. Oops. Let's create a function here. You'll see why. So we call it render wine. The reason I want a function is so I don't complicate my code in my render. So let's do const render wine, anonymous function. That's going to return some JSX. So I want to check initially if wine is null. Then I just want to return null. Again, I could do this conditionally here, but I usually don't like writing large conditional statements inside of my main return. So that's why I created a function here to do my rendering. Part of my rendering here. So instead, if it's null, return null. Otherwise, I'm going to return wine dot some JSX. We'll return an H2, maybe an H3 to be a little smaller. We'll do wine is going to be wine.name. Let me know if you guys have any questions. It just gets a little tedious. So again, I could just copy and paste from the curriculum page, but let's just clear it up. So we're going to have a price, that paragraph. So just to point this out again, my model is called name. That's why I'm using wine.name. You guys might have wine_name. You guys should know what data you're working with, so don't let that throw you off. Make sure that matches what your backend is sending you. So your serializer specifies what that field's going to be called. Mine is called name, not wine_name. We have varietal, so varietal. We're not going to show the wine ID to the user because they don't really care about it. So wine description, varietal, should be good to go. All right, so simply just showing this data on the page. Anyone know offhand why I have the red squiggles here? You guys know?
You have to put it in one div or
Got it.
one out.
Yep, we can only return one top level elements from JSX. So
You could just do empty brackets though, right? You don't necessarily need the div.
I think you do need the div, if I am correct. I don't know, let's try it. I don't think you just have brackets here. Yeah.
I think it means empty tags.
Yeah. I'm sorry, not the brackets, just like the greater than and lesser than.
Yeah, without divs like this.
Yeah, what are they called? Fragments?
Yeah, I think I forget who was doing it. Was it Quinn Stevens? Yeah, he might have called them fragments. I've actually never used those, but apparently you could just have, yeah, empty. I like divs. They make my life a little better. So we'll have a div there. Description typo. Okay, so let's see if this works. So let's just follow all the wires that we are kind of wired up here. So we have a use effect, but we forgot our dependency array. So let's add that in here. So what we're doing right now, when this page renders, we're going to make an API call to some ID. We need to call this function. So it's called get wine with some ID. What is that ID value going to be? Anyone know? How do I know which wine to kind of fetch here from my wine page?
You need to get it from use params.
Yes, James Kelsey's got it. So we want to extract it from the URL. So we go to /1. I got an error here because life happens. So here, wine page, we are at wines and then some ID. I can go to wine 77. Doesn't really matter right now. So that is how we want to extract the ID from the URL. To do that, we got to use params from the React router. So use params is another function that we need to import from React router DOM. So let's call that router props and const params equals use params. Again, I wouldn't blame if you guys kind of forgot all the syntax. Just kind of understand. You can probably look up documentation and figure out how to get params out. In this case, we can get a params object. And we should have access to something called params.wine ID. Can someone tell me where this wine ID is coming from? Let's go with, who am I chatted with? Someone out there? Kristen Ruprecht, are you there?
Hi, yes, I just stepped out for a second. I missed the question.
No worries. So do you know where the name of wine ID comes from? So I'm doing params.wine ID. Do you maybe remember or know where we're actually tracking that? So I can't call this anything. I can't say anything, right? That's not going to work. I specifically need to call it wine ID. Do you know where that value is coming from?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head.
That's fine. Yeah, so if you recall from our routes, we created this variable in our URL. So this colon says we're going to treat this like a variable. So since we named it wine uppercase ID, that's the exact name we gotta use from the params. So params gives us access to all the variables from our URL. So I go back to wine page. So use params. It's going to get an object. It's going to have an entry for wine capital ID. That is from the URL. So that lets us extract the ID from the URL. We pass that ID here. We probably didn't need to have a variable, but I created it anyway. So we use that ID here with our fetch wine by ID. That should give us back some data. So let's see if this actually works. So you can go back to my homepage. All right, it's going to fetch all the wines. Maybe. Too many requests. Oh, yep. That is, wait. Did someone break my API somehow? Yeah, someone probably made too many requests. You probably got into an infinite loop here. So yeah, I probably shouldn't have exposed my APIs to you guys, but all right. I think I'm locked out for now. So let's go to my localhost then. Anyone want to admit to making too many requests by any chance?
You sure? Because I mean, I could still do a GET request and see everything. It's still coming in on my side. If you try Postman, it's still working. So I don't know.
Okay, maybe I'm lying. Maybe it's still working. So we want to GET request. Nope, I get an error now. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe your IP blocked, because I mean, I just did it again. I'm doing GET requests and everything's coming back fine.
Interesting. All right, maybe I locked myself out. That's quite possible. So yeah, maybe I had like I didn't have my initial dependency lister. That's possible. So let's go back to localhost to get this working. API. Yeah, maybe I'm the guilty party. All right, so I'm going to localhost. So back on my own server. Let's see if this works. Refresh. Oh, that was right. All right, we had our cores issue. Oh, life is so tough. All right, bear with me here. Let's do a quick thingamabob. I'm taking down my project. So long. Let's create a new project. So let's do Heroku create. Can I create the same project? All right, cool. Then let's do git. Let's do what is it? Git push Heroku. No. Git remote add Heroku that URL. One of this will let me circumvent this. So create a new project. Oh, right. Let me go to my backend project. So cd wine project, cd backend, cd project, backend. All right, so in my backend folder now, so I'm trying to migrate my Django server back. So if I do Heroku, git remote add Heroku URL. All right, looks like that didn't change. Then git push Heroku, does that work?
Encore, just on that last little function that you created to display, I think it was the wine name. Was that maybe causing you to make too many calls?
No, I'm guessing I left off my array here. I think initially for my homepage, I left that out. So I think that made too many requests, potentially.
Oh.
Actually, I don't know, because I wasn't making too many changes. So I'm not sure why I got locked out, to be honest.
Yeah, there was I saw one function that was being called with the open close parentheses somewhere, I think, but I'm not sure if that was it.
No,
it wasn't.
Wouldn't think that would make too many calls. All right, let's see if this got me going. All right, so I send. They block my IP.
Yeah, because I could still hit the point. I mean, there's an error now for the database basically doesn't exist.
Right, makes sense because we forgot to migrate. So Heroku migrates, run Python manage py migrates. So we need to do that again because we created a new project. Heroku needs to create a new database, which it did. We need to migrate our migrations to that database. So that is an important step. Oh man, a lot of steps here. All right, does that clear up my Postman? Nope, does this clear it up? All right, so I can access my project now. Course anywhere might be blocking me though. I think that's the issue. Good lesson about being blocked out of API between requests. That again. Wait. What? Did I not specify it here? Oh, right. So here. How come I can't see a preview here? Yeah, I might be kind of in a bad state right now. So we got our wine detail page going. I don't think I can make any more requests here. Let's try one more time. Oh, right, we switched to local hosts. Let's get that back. Apologies for all the chaos this morning. Save that, refresh. Misdirected request. What was that?
It gave me that a few times, but then started working.
You got this before?
Yeah, and then I just refreshed like twice, and it gave me the one.
Yeah, I'm just getting like a new error each time. All right, there we go. We're back to good. I don't have any wine data. If you guys want to hook me up with some of your awesome wines, we can do that. I'm going to do that through the admin panel. So this will be a good Heroku review. To that, I'm going to do Heroku run Python. I need to create a super user. So again, I'm doing this on Heroku's end, not on my local machine.
They're all back for me now.
Really?
Yeah, I just added about 100 wines.
Thanks for hooking us up. All right. That makes it much easier. Thank you. I guess to be fully correct, I should probably have fixtures in my Django project so that I could, anytime I need to recreate my database, I can just run those fixtures. You guys remember fixtures from Django? I didn't bother to do that, but it looks like Kevin's hooking us up with some seeded data. Thank you. All right, so let's try going back to a detail. So let's go to heights. There we go. So we got our wine detail page working, but the question is, there's one issue here. Anyone maybe hip to the game of what is not going to work if I try it? Kind of a vague question. All right, won't leave you in suspense too much. What if I go to wine ID 15? I'm pretty sure Kevin's data has 15. I'm gonna hit enter. All right, that works. That worked. Did that refresh my page? I think that refreshed my page. Gosh, I'm bad with examples. All right, what I was trying to get at was if we internally change our route, how can we do this? I guess there's not a good way for me to show this right now, but what I was trying to point out here was for our wine page, we need to do something a little different. So wine page. Here we have an empty dependency array. We technically would want this to update anytime our params change, right? Because we're getting our wine ID from the params. So this is a good case where we would enter in params dot-wine ID, because this logic is dependent on this value, right? So anytime this value changes, we're now saying run this use effect each time. So it's going to call get wine each time with a new wine ID in this case. So the key thing is my data, my information here is not updating this value. If it were, I could get into a potentially infinite loop. In this case, my wine ID dictates what my wine data should be. So that is why my dependency array should have params.wine ID, because that is what this whole logic relies on. All right, I guess I don't have good use cases. When I type in a new value up here, that actually refreshes my page. Like it refreshes my app. It doesn't refresh my component per se. If we added some links that could kind of expose it, if you guys remember from the articles project where we have those section links, so we click on one section and directly go to another section using the same component. We could wire that up if you guys are curious. I could do that, where we add a link tag to another wine. Maybe have like a next button or something. But in this case, just understand what this is doing. So anytime our URL changes, we should refetch our to get our new wine data. Make sense?
Ankur, a quick question, because I think this makes sense, but where I'm a little confused. Didn't we do that thing where we say like, don't do the default? Is that where we would do this? Where we say, hey, the default behavior is that the page reloads, but then we had like a line of code that says, don't reload the page, but that was maybe on a form submit, wasn't it? And
Yeah.
that's not the case here. Anytime we go to another URL, because in that case, like in this case, we are going to a new URL because we've got to change that number in the URL. You're saying if we added a next button, that is what would change the params then, is what we do there?
Yeah, let's try to wire this up. Just why not? We have 10 minutes before lunch. We'll probably dip into lunch a little bit, but let's keep this going. So sorry for extended time without a break, but let's add a next button just for fun. So button, let's actually use React Bootstrap button. So those look kind of nicer. So button from React Bootstrap. Pretty simple to use. Just import button, capital B, from React Bootstrap. Now we can use that button right here. So I'm just creating a next button just for fun to actually expose the bug that I was trying to highlight. So button will be, let's just say next line. This is going to be wrapped in a link tag. Link to, what do you want to do here? Link to, we have wine. I'll move this into render wine. All right. The reason I'm doing this is because I don't want to deal with a null wine object. So link tag will go take us somewhere. We need to end that link tag. Probably need to import this link tag also. Have I lost most of the audience, or are you guys following what we're doing here? I feel like I've been talking a lot, so maybe put people some sleep. But let's keep going here. So link also comes from React Rabbit. Okay, so I want to add a next button. So I create a link, and I'm nesting a button inside that, so that button would act like a link. In this case, I want to go to a specific location. So where do I want to go to? Let's do backticks, $. So string interpolation, I'm going to go to wine.id. +1. So I'm going to increment my wines. Obviously, it's going to break on the very last line. So that'll be fine. So in this case, the next wine should take me to the next wine ID. I think that should work. Let's see if this works. I'm going to temporarily get rid of this. Oh, so delete that. Let's see if I can recreate the bug or create the bug I was trying to create in the first place. All right, so save this. All right, so we have our next wine button. We are on wine number 15. Is that a trailing slash move? All right, so wine number 15. If I hit the next wine button, that doesn't take me where I want to go. So let's see. This should be wines. Let's see if that fixes it. How do I get locked out again? I'm confused here. All right, so this should take me to wine 16, but it looks like I'm locked out again. I don't know how this is happening because my code looks secure.
It says something about wine API line 11 in your console. I don't know.
It's just the response I'm getting.
Oh, I see.
That my try catch fetch is returning this to me. So what's happening here is if I go to my wine API, my try catch fetch is checking response at OK. That is false because we got a 429 error code, which means too many requests. So we are throwing a new exception to show what we got. So again, I don't know how I'm getting locked out. It might be just multiple people using it. I don't think my code is making too many requests.
Is it from the get wine function on wine page? Line 16. So fetch one by ID. I don't know, but I mean, that's what the console says. It looks like it's trying to get that wine a whole bunch of times. And I'm not sure if it's down below in your return, in your final return. It looks like maybe you were calling that function. Not as a.
Again, I don't think it's an error with my code. So again, looking at my console, I only have 2 requests that I made. I made it here and here. There's no infinite loop going on here. So what's happening is I'm making a request, but the endpoint is telling me I'm locked out. It's giving me a 429. So the server on Heroku side saying, hey, we're cutting you off. We're sending you a 429 because we're not going to allow you to make any more requests. For some reason, I'm exceeding the number of requests what's going on. I don't think it's my code, but it could be. In this case, if I click next, I'm taking the 16, but notice I'm still on this page. Obviously, this didn't change. But the whole idea here was, let me just take down my server again. Settings, let's kill it again. I know this isn't fun, but not sure I'm getting locked out so easily. All right, so we're going to create a new app again. Should be easy to do. All right, so we need to do all of our steps again. We want to, all right, want to Heroku create that project, Platoon Wine API. All right, Heroku, we're going to do a git remote add Heroku this item. All right, that already exists. Git push Heroku. And then we need to migrate, and I think that should be the last thing we need to do.
Kind of, I get an idea. Whenever you save, sorry, whenever you're typing, how are you saving your code? And is that, sorry, the server, like it changes on every save, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, you're right. So I have autosave on, so anytime I switch off the window, it's saving it. But again, it's only making like a couple requests, because I'm not like, doing this 500 times in like a second. Again, that threshold should be pretty high from my understanding. But again, I'm getting locked out for some reason. Maybe it just flagged my IP address or something. But let's get this working again. Okay, last thing we need to do is Heroku run Python manage, mine's kind of fried right now, manage Py, and we want to migrate. If you can, please don't seed my database. I think I'll just seed it with my own data. Okay, so yeah, I'm not sure if the seeding could be like tripping off that threshold. But here we have backend, and then we want to create super user, create super user. Okay, I'm gonna call that admin, admin, admin. Sure, it's fine for me. Probably should use a more secure password since it's actually deployed on the web, but we'll live with it. So if I go to my apps, should have been created. All right, here, open app. Hopefully it's running now. There we go. Well, it's familiar. I'm going to go to /admin. All right, so good. Let's register. Let's add some wines quickly. Let's go with wine 1, price is 111. Varietal is 1, description is 1. Save that. Create a couple more just for fun. Wine 2 would be 222. Varietal would be 2. Description would be 2. And one more wine. So go to wine 3. Price is 333. Varietal is 3, and the description is 3. All right, so I got a few wines, not as many as Kevin was supplying us with, but enough to work with for now. So let's see if this will work for my homepage. Homepage, wines. Still locked out. Well, that's not good. All right, I kind of give up here. So we were able to code up our homepage. If this were working correctly, we should be able to get a wine detail, which we got to. Last thing we want to do was add wine. So let's code that up. We're not going to be able to test it because I keep getting locked out for some reason. Too many requests. But add wine. What do you want to do here? So let's just copy and paste from here because we are short on time. So we did the wine detail page. key thing here, again, you usually want to have params.wineID as a dependency because that is what your fetch depends on. All right, so we did the wine detail page. Last thing we want to do is add wine page. So for this, we're going to create a form. Let's just copy and paste, as I mentioned, just to expedite it. See what our form will look like. If I can copy this. All right, so add wine page, copied from the curriculum page, replace that. All right, so we're using some Bootstrap elements. We're using form and button from React Bootstrap. We're using our wine API. So what's going on here is we have this big block of code, which is just generating our form. So it's going to have a label and an input for all those fields. We have a button for add wine. That type is submit, so that is important for your button, must have a type of submit. And then for our form elements, we want an on submit handler. So when we actually submit this form, we want to process it right within our React app. So this is what I think Michael was talking about, where we want to call prevent default. So we don't want this to refresh our page. That's a default behavior. We want to prevent that. So we call events prevent default. Then we proceed to extract the data out of that form. Again, we've done this before, so this should hopefully review on the syntax. It might take a while to get used to, but we're getting the elements one by one. So we're using the array here to grab each value in order for name, price, varietal, description. We package up that data in an object. We pass that object along to our add wine API or API method. So we remember what that looks like. That takes in a wine object. Remember, we need to stringify that wine object.
Hey, Ankur,
Yes.
on that last page that you were on, a couple of your words got screwed up.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I didn't even know I did that. Yeah, so again, we're passing that object to our wine API method. That's going to stringify that, add it part of our init object, and then pass it along to our try catch fetch, which if everything were working correctly, meaning I was not locked out of my endpoint, that should create an item for you, as in a new wine on the endpoint or on the server's database. All right, so let's take a look at what we just coded up on our add wine page. So again, this is just a form, nothing too fancy going on here. Just we are using Bootstrap, so there's these extra kind of nested components. Otherwise, if we go to wines/add, so we should have a form that looks like this. So sizing is kind of weird, but it takes up the full width. We add a name, so let's go with wine 4. Price would be $4.44. Varietal will be 4, description will be 4. Assuming we're not locked out, like we don't get a 429, we should be able to click add wine and get a response back. So try hitting this. Yep, I'm still locked out, unfortunately. That's not fun to deal with. Okay, let's try going to the last point. So I know we're due for lunch, but let's power through this together. So last thing we want to do is the CORS request. So we're going through CORS Anywhere, which is a security kind of loophole. But what if we wanted to make a direct request to my endpoint? So instead of going to CORS Anywhere, like I'm doing before, what if I just want to go straight to my URL endpoint right here? Well, we can do that, but we need to add this idea of CORS headers. So let's follow the curriculum page together. We need to pip install Django CORS headers. So we're going to do that. So again, this is in our backend. So pip install Django CORS headers on our Django project. Give that a run. Hopefully that shouldn't take too long. Great, that installed. We need to do a pip freeze to update our requirements.txt. Okay, so just double check our requirements.txt. That should have CORS headers. Looks like 3.10.1 is the latest version. All right, cool. So we installed that. In our settings, we need to add CORS headers, one word, in our installed apps. So I'm going to do that in my project settings. Again, this is in our Django project. So we switch gears from React to Django again. So down here, I want to go to installed apps. I'm going to add in CORS headers. All right, one word. CORS with an S, headers, plural. That is in my installed apps. Cool. The next thing, I'm going to copy and paste this because I've definitely mistyped it before. You need to add this to your middleware section. Again, this is another array inside of your settings.py. you want to add cores.middleware.cores middleware above Django middleware common middleware. So this ordering does matter. You want cores headers on top of common middleware. I'm going to copy that. Middleware should be right underneath your installed apps section. I want to put this again above common middleware. All right, so that should be good. Finally, we want to add cores origin whitelist. This is telling us who can actually make a request to our endpoint here. So I'll put this at the bottom, I guess. Cores origin whitelist. I'm going to do localhost. I think that should be valid. Localhost 3000 is my React front end. So that's who's going to be making that request. All right. So let's test this out locally first. So I'm not going to deploy this to Heroku. So in order to test this out, I need to go back to my front end and change up my API request. So instead of going to this URL, I want to go to my local host. So I'm going to run the server off my local host, which I think I have running already. Cores origin whitelist should have a path. That's not good. Settings.py. Let's take a look at cores headers. Cores headers. So again, documentation should be our savior here. So Django cores headers. All right, Django's cores headers. Let's see if they have an example for us. So I think this should guide us. We did our pip install. We did our installed apps. We did our middleware. How do we use this? So it looks like cores allowed origins. That's looks like what I want. So I'm going to copy that. So it looks like cores origin whitelist must be deprecated. So let's go local host 3000. Because I'm going to run this all on my local machine right now. Okay, so let's see if my server is happy with that. Do I have my server running anywhere? Nope. All right, so we'll do python manage.py run server. Cores should not have a path. Why are you doing this? About the slash. All right, I guess you don't want a trailing slash. That was always confuse me. All right, so where are we going here? Base URL not defined. What did I screw up there? Then uncomment that. Okay, let's see if this works locally. So if I click on add wine, what happens? There we go. We added a wine. So again, this is all my local host right now. But the key thing here is we added that whitelist. So this allows us to bypass that cores security thing. We're telling the server who is actually allowed to make requests here. So if I go back to my homepage, I should see all my wines here. So I have the three initially went and wine 4 I just added. So if I go back to /add, I should be able to add another wine. So let's go with wine 5. Price will be $5.05, 5 and 5. All right, cool. So it looks like that's working. Let's deploy this to Heroku, and then we'll promise we'll get you lunch. So here, it looks like it's working on my local machine. And I want to push it to Heroku. What do I need to do? Well, I need to do a git add, git commit -m, added cores headers. All right, git push Heroku. And then my front end, I'm going to point to my actual site now. So let's see, where's that? Okay, I no longer need to use cores anywhere. That was our bypass when we didn't have cores headers specified. Now I should be able to do base URL, just my file path. I don't need to bother with cores anywhere, and hopefully that doesn't lock me out. So hopefully the cores anywhere was the one locking me out for whatever reason. So if I make this my base URL, in quotes. Let's see if this works. Comment out that one. All right, so I still have my React on my local machine. I'm now deploying my server updates to Heroku. So that's what's going on down here. It should be deployed soon. I could spy on it if I want to. Let's see. Here's my app. Let's check it out. Activity. So this has an activity log. It looks like build succeeded. So that means my server should be up and running. So let's give this a try now. So go back to my homepage, /wines. All right, cool. These are the wines I added on my Heroku side. So these are a little different than what I had on my local machine. All right, that looks promising. Let's go to a wine detail. All right, so I go into wine 1. So this is the whole thing I was trying to do like 15 minutes ago. This next wine button should take me to wine 2, right? So let me hit next wine. Notice that my URL updated, but my wine detail page did not. And again, the answer to that, you guys should already know by now, is because I commented out this dependency, right? My params that wine ID changed, but my use effects was not told to refire every time that value changes. So in this case, I add in params that wine ID. Now, if I go back, so I'm on wine 1, refresh, let's make sure we're working with latest. So wine 1, if I hit next wine, that should take me to URL/2, but that should also re-trigger my component to call that use effect again. So I go here, notice that did update. Okay, so I am connected to my Heroku deployment. Let's try adding something there, and that should be the last thing I want to do. Go to add. This will be wine, I lost track. Let's go wine 77. Price will be 77, 77, 77, and 727. All right, add wine. Cool. Looks like I got no errors. There's no next wine I need to go to. ID is 5. We go back to wines. I should see wine 1. Oh, someone added yum. That's a pricey wine there. You guys have some expensive tastes there, but yeah, my server's live. You guys can add to it. Again, I'm not sure I was getting limited by cores anywhere. That probably was something on my end, but might have been too many requests somehow. Well, cool. All right, so again, that was a lot. I know that. But at the end of the day, you guys should be comfortable creating React app. You guys should be comfortable with creating a React backend that serves up JSON data. But now we're just connecting everything. So again, we're still making fetch calls just like we were to third-party APIs, right? So if you look at here, instead of calling some random URL here, we are calling our own API that we created. So this is the same thing with third-party APIs. Same principles are going on. So we're requesting data, getting it, and then displaying it on our front end. Okay, I feel like I've talked for like 5 hours there. What questions you guys have? You guys kind of understand the concepts, even if you guys ran into errors or had some issues. Hopefully you understand what you need to do. Your assignment for today is to just go through this tutorial. So again, if I lost you in the sauce somewhere, totally fine. You guys should take the rest of the day to go through this. And again, if you get stuck anywhere, reach out as always. Questions?
Are we going to go over updating and deleting at all?
No, but that should be something that's possible, right? So we just did a post request. We should be able to do a put request of specific URL. So I'll leave that as an open challenge, but again, you guys should have the tools with you to know how to do that. So I would add another API method. My base URL would not be what I want. I want to send a put request to base URLs plus wine ID. The data will look very similar, but yeah, you guys should be capable to do it. Again, definitely try it. I like that Jordan mentioned that. Try to submit some put requests and delete requests and see if you could do that also. Yeah, if I don't want to, if I don't want to wine here, if I want to delete wine 77, I should probably have a button here that says delete wine, and that should let me do it. Cool, cool, cool. What other questions do you guys have? All right, we definitely deserve a break, so let me stop recording.